What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated on Fan Nation. We got a Wednesday edition of the podcast. If you're tuned in to the live show on YouTube, Oregon Football, Max Torres, thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's been fun doing these and interacting with Duck fans more. And if you're watching on the replay or listening on the podcasting platforms, go ahead and drop me a comment and let me know what you think about all this Oregon coaching search madness that's going on. Team getting ready for the Alamo Bowl, where we have recruiting news to talk about. So there is just so much going on inside the around the world of Oregon football, and we get to talk about it today. Did a Twitter Spaces last night. If you're not following me there, then you definitely should, at mtorresports, that name right there on your screen if you're here in the chat. And then if you're watching on the channel, go ahead and subscribe. It's been really cool to do YouTube videos and do these live shows and see where your guys' heads are at. It only takes a second out of your day, and it really, really is a tremendous help for me trying to do my thing here covering the Oregon Ducks. So it's wild, right? I think that over these I don't know if I'd say 24 hours, but certainly the past 12 hours or so, I feel like we're starting to hear some more chatter. I know one thing that I wanted to get into off the top here was the reports that came out this morning from Football Scoop with saying that it looks like Tim DeRuyter is going to be heading over to Texas Tech, going out to Lubbock to become their new defensive coordinator. And then the Athletic's Bruce Feldman also reported that Marcel Yates, the Oregon safeties coach, is going to be heading out to Lubbock as well to join the Red Raiders. So it's just crazy how fast everything is escalated, right? You look at Monday being the day that the Cristobal news became official. We've already seen 3 decommitments. And then we had the Moorhead news before that became official. Cristobal leaving, that is. So Moorhead's over at Akron. And then now you have the 3 most important hires to make within your program. You have the head coach, obviously, and then the OC and DC after that. So it's just shocking to me how quickly this is all escalated. I mean, you would expect it to happen from a head coaching perspective when someone leaves, but that's what kind of made it so weird for me, because a lot of you guys know that I'm one of the younger cats out here in the Oregon media market, and Mario's the only coach that I ever covered. So it was definitely surreal watching that introductory press conference yesterday at Miami. I was watching that on their Twitter page, and I just couldn't help but think for a second, is this really happening? Like, I was just covering a game that he coached in on Friday, and then the press conference that followed that, where he was sitting in front of us and he was wearing the Oregon O, and yeah, that'd be, I mean, it was just wild to see that he's all the way across the country now, back home in Miami, and he's got the reins over there. And I feel like, I mean, he's going to turn, I think that he's probably going to turn that program around. I feel like I'm pretty confident in saying that. If you look at, he's already making recruiting visits, seeing some targets. And I think that it's going to be fun to follow at the very least, whatever your thoughts are on him. I think that I'm just excited to see what he does and how that program turns around, because Clemson had a down year. North Carolina was a total disappointment. So it feels like the ACC is pretty open for the taking. And I can see that would maybe be part of the factor of why this all, why the timing felt right. All right. So yeah, if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and I'll try to get to them as quickly as I can. Can't get to all of them necessarily, or if you just have some comments, whatever's on your mind to guide the discussion, then we can certainly do that. Question coming from Chunky Monkey: Would have Moorhead had been promoted to head coach if he didn't leave? I think that's certainly an interesting hypothetical to ask yourself, because obviously he had head coaching experience at Mississippi State before he came over to Oregon. Mississippi State didn't do the best that year. If I can remember, trying to think of what his record was, and when Moorhead, what their record was when Moorhead was the head coach. So let me see and look that up. Okay, 2018, 2019, Mississippi State schedule 2018. So let's see how they did in 2018. We had, they went 0-5 overall. Why does that seem like it's not that many games? Oh, all wins during the 2018 season were vacated by NCAA Committee on Infractions. So that is not something that I was aware of. So a little hard to to judge the 2018 season, right? Maybe we can go to 2019 and see what that was looking like. All right, so 2019 season, they went 6-7, 3-5 in the SEC. And let's see some of their wins. I'm trying to think of what their notable wins were. Oh man, yeah, that was just not a good. They beat Ole Miss by 1 point, and they lost to Louisville in the Music City Bowl, and then they got ran by Bama, beat pretty handily by Texas A&M, ran by LSU, destroyed by Auburn. Well, yeah, that was an ugly season, but I don't know how much stock you can put into just such a short coaching stint as a head coach, but I think he certainly would have been in the conversation, right? I think that if you're looking at what the staff was like before the Cristobal news broke, I think that he was probably the most appealing name if you wanted to promote from within, looking at the people who were already on the staff. So I think that I don't know if he would have been promoted. Because I just feel like, I don't know. It's just hard to get a finger on how big of a recruiter he was and how that kind of played into it. But the reason I think that he would definitely be one of the better candidates if they were going to promote within is because of that offensive ingenuity, right? I think most people are pretty sold right now that their next hire should be an offensive guy, unless they end up getting Dave Aranda, which is going to be pretty difficult right now. But as of the time that we're recording this, 2:37 p.m. Wednesday, December 8th on the West Coast, I don't think that Aranda has signed his contract. Excuse me. I don't think that Aranda has signed a contract extension with Baylor. So I think he's obviously a big name to follow here as things heat up here. Let's see. Yeah, Mikey G saying that some have suggested he may still be offered. They would buy out from Akron. That would be insane. I think that, you're looking at a program like Akron. I don't think that a buyout would be too crazy, right? It's not like a big name program. So I feel like I'd be pretty confident that Oregon could buy that out. And then follow-up question from Mikey G. Are there any head coach, offensive coach pairings that make a better hire as a whole versus just a big head coach? I think that's a good question. So I think he's getting at, if you bring in a big head coach, is that going to be more effective, or can a pairing, I guess, between a head coach and an offensive coordinator make it more effective? I think is kind of what he's getting at here. This is the first coaching search that I've covered. So, I'm still obviously learning a lot, kind of like I alluded to at the top here in the show. But I think if you can get the right guy, two guys that work in tandem together, maybe they coach together at the last stop. That's kind of what happens when head coaches get hired away is, we're seeing it at Washington right now, right? DeBoer is bringing over a lot of his guys from Fresno State. I think that if that were to happen at Oregon or, anywhere, a head coach and OC pairing, I feel like it's kind of an opportunity for some continuity, I would think, or it would maybe on the surface at least give me more confidence about whatever product you saw in the field at their last stop, maybe carrying over a little bit more, right? Because you don't have to mesh with new people. You're probably going to have the same offense in place, a lot of the same system. That familiarity is there. So I think that you have that, that kind of opportunity for some continuity and some kind of assuredness, I guess. But if you bring in the right head coach who is maybe a great offensive mind in their own right, then you also have to take into account how are they going to build out their staff. That's why this is so interesting, in part, among a myriad of other reasons, is because it's just such a big puzzle. There's so many different parts to this equation, and the fact that it's all looking like it has to happen in such a short span of time is what I think makes it so interesting. to follow, to see a premier program in college football, at least a premier brand in college athletics like Oregon going through this right now after beating Ohio State. I mean, do you think you could tell yourself after the Ducks beat Ohio State, like if you just rewind a little bit, I find it would be hard to think that back then it's like, yeah, man, I hope we don't the Ducks don't lose their coach at the end of the season. I feel like that win over Ohio State had so many people just hopeful for the future and seeing that there was the potential for even greater long-term success, because even though the higher even though the season as a whole was kind of a mixed bag in terms of highs and lows, I think that it was still overall, pretty solid. Let's see, the ability to hire within when. All right, Mikey G says not just continuity, but the ability to hire within when, if not, the next head coach leaves. Oh, okay. So I think you're getting at, if you hire from within, then you're going to see some continuity within there. Sorry if I'm not understanding your point. I'm trying to as best I can here. But yeah, then if the next head coach leaves, then you'll have somebody as an okay. So you hire the head coach and offensive coordinator pair, and then they come in, and then if the head coach leaves, then you have the offensive coordinator that's kind of there ready to take over the reins. I think is kind of what you're getting at there, Mikey. So I think, yeah, that I see that point a lot more now, because I feel like a big part of the equation that people are talking about is if you want to go for the long-term solution or the splash hire, right? That's kind of a big thing that we keep hearing about in these discussions. So I'm personally of the belief, the more that I think about it, that you need to go for the splash hire, because the national championship window, in a lot of ways, I feel like it's I don't want to say open, but it feels like it's promising, at least for Oregon, just because of the talent that they have on the roster. And at the same time, it feels like it's still kind of far away, just when you're looking at how the SEC is dominating. But you gotta win the Pac-12. That's obviously the prereq here. And I think another reason that the splash hire needs to happen now is, even though Cristobal is gone and all these staffers are leaving, Mario had a great point on his exit interview. There's 3 top 10 classes on the roster right now, and their best football is ahead of them. If they make a long-term hire who isn't good at recruiting, how do you know how long is it going to take? How could we possibly know how long it's going to take to get this kind of talent back on the roster in the near future? So I feel like if you get a big name that can really utilize that talent, a strong offensive mind, then I think that would be really helpful. And then let's see. All right, Chunky Monkey is saying, I'm not sure if Lane is a good fit. When he was at USC, there were reports of him being toxic and immature. Paul Feinbaum did say he has matured since then. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's Lane Kiffin has been, I don't want to say it's the biggest name trending for Oregon right now, but if you're on Duck Twitter, you know that that's probably the biggest name that all the Oregon fans are talking about right now, whether it's criticizing that idea or looking at it as a possibility for Oregon as they're navigating this coaching search. And the fact that he went through Alabama and got to learn under Saban is definitely encouraging, because that's the gold standard of football, right? So you figure that would be a good sign, but I think that's probably why some fans might be hesitant, or think that Oregon would be hesitant to hire a guy like Lane Kiffin. So I think that he's certainly an exciting guy that would do things his way, right? I think with Mario, when you're looking at how he handled things, he was, very, very proper, organized, disciplined, said all the right things for the most part in press conferences. And I feel like Lane's just, he's a kind of an unapologetic guy. I feel like he's, I'm Lane, this is what you got. And this is me. I'm not gonna apologize for what I'm how I'm acting or what I'm putting out there on the field, and that's just what you get. What you see is what you get. I feel like that's probably the best way to put it. But I think he's probably the most exciting offensive guy out there right now. Joe Brady would obviously be another guy in that conversation that I think would drum up some excitement. I feel like I keep saying that all the time, so maybe I have to find a better way to say this. But yeah, the Lane Kiffin train has definitely picked up some steam, at least among the Oregon fans. Tyler Two Chains says Dan Mullen. Yeah. Man, Florida was so bad this year, and that was a guy that showed he can't. If you can't recruit in Florida at the University of Florida, I don't know how much confidence that you have bringing him out here to the West Coast. I mean, I know he has a track record as a good offensive mind, but it's I feel like that's not the best direction for Oregon to go here, especially because you see kind of his body of work and what he's done as a head coach. Although Mississippi State was pretty successful when he was there with Dak, so maybe you're kind of looking at this like, what would he do if he got to work with a guy like a Ty Thompson or any other quarterback, or a Robbie Ashford or a Jay Butterfield, or if they bring in another quarterback? I think that's a huge part of the discussion that we're having, right? Oregon is looking to bring in their head coach, but you got to think, especially like our offense here, what is that coach going to have to work with as far as the talent on the roster? And we've only seen one transfer so far since the Mario move became official. That's kicker Henry Cattleman announcing that he's going to be moving on to his next stop. That was Tuesday kind of early evening hours, I guess you could say. So that's another part, because they want to get a guy in here so that the current players are aware of kind of what's happening here. Obviously, all the people that are recruiting fans, that's what I really enjoy doing. They're worried about that and asking about that, but you got to make sure that you get a guy in place so that these current players know what's going on. And the longer it takes, I guess, the more uncertainty that you have. I don't know. That's an interesting one to think about here. Dan Mullen, I think, because I had Dan Mullen as a guy on the offensive coordinator hot board, but I hadn't really considered him too much for a head coaching job, because you obviously, like I said, you see how things went at Florida and you think, okay, maybe as a step back to just calling plays and just being an OC, kind of what he needs. Would that be good for him? Or do you take a gamble on him running the program? That's why I feel like, even though, Kiffin doesn't have the best pass per se, he is running that program pretty well at Ole Miss. So I think that gives you some confidence from that perspective. Let's see. All right. Have you been able to reach out to any of the commits to see where their heads are at? Yeah, I've talked to a few commits to kind of check out, what things are, where they're at right now. I talked to Jaleel Florence and I got an update on him over on Ducks Digest that I think people should definitely read. And I feel like, what I heard from him as far as, USC goes, the Oklahoma staff that is coming over to USC, they're really selling the vision and talking about getting LA going again and getting SC being that premier brand kind of a deal. And yeah, it's a lot of these guys, I feel like they're just in limbo. That's the biggest thing I can kind of say right now. I have an update on TJ Dudley, who just decommitted yesterday. A couple days ago, I believe it was. Because he was one of the first guys to decommit after Tanner Bailey. So it sounded like he was basically saying that a lot of these commits kind of saw it coming, because these guys, they get a group chat going and they're all talking to each other, and he was saying that some of the commits had kind of been talking about it among the group, so that they saw that it was kind of a possibility that this might happen. And he was saying, there's no love lost or anything, nothing but love for Cristobal. He just had to be with his family and do what was best for him, is more or less what Dudley was saying. But you got to figure that the recruiting ties in the South are definitely going to take a hit. But when I was talking to Florence, I should say, because I know he's getting mentioned here in the comments a little bit. I asked him about Tucker, and he was saying he's basically in the same deal right now. Those guys are obviously really close friends, and it looks like they're probably going to end up playing college ball together. So I think USC has as much momentum as anybody right now on the recruiting trail, and I feel like they could definitely grab some guys here before the early signing period begins. So I don't want to say that any Oregon commits are necessarily trending toward SC, but the uncertainty that this move created is obviously not ideal for the Ducks. Vincent says Orgeron is getting paid $16.8 million over the next 4 years. I doubt he jumps back into coaching right away. All he has to do is make one appearance a year at LSU to get his buyout. Yeah, that was so weird that happened mid-season for Orgeron at LSU. And I think that even though he's getting paid a lot of money, you got to think that these head coaches are competitors at the end of the day. So even if he is making a lot of money and he doesn't really have to do anything, maybe he just wants to get back into coaching and compete and lead a football team, or at least be involved. I don't know if he would be a fit at Oregon necessarily, but obviously he knows what he's doing after winning a Pac-12 a national championship, with the Tigers, with one of the best college football teams that we've ever seen. Let's see here. Let's see. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this Taki interview? Yeah, so there was a report out there that Taki got brought in, and I was kind of hearing that there's been some whispers that it didn't go so well. So that was a little shocking because I feel like he's a big name right now, and the BYU program is doing really well. But he's a BYU guy, and I feel like because he came into interview, reportedly came into interview, it's like, I don't know how I feel about Taki, because I feel like I need to dig into him a little bit more and kind of see what he's been able to do at BYU, and maybe he's just gonna stay at BYU because BYU is going to the Big 12. So I think that their ascension is really good for the Big 12 right now. The Big 12 feels like it's pretty wide open, especially with Aranda doing good things at Baylor. Sorry, I just had a little bit of a brain fart. I feel like BYU's positioned to be pretty competitive in the Big 12, and Cincinnati is obviously going to be there as well. I mean, maybe it'll be more competitive than the Pac-12 once all those teams come together. I can't remember what year that move to the Big 12 becomes official. If anybody remembers that, definitely throw it in the comments and see what we can find out there. Oregon Duck says Kiffin equals playoffs year one. Wow, that's pretty wishful thinking, but I mean, for it to go that well. But I think there is a lot of offensive talent on this roster right now. You got pretty much everybody coming back from the O-line that I think is obviously a good sign. So whoever plays quarterback, you got to feel that they're going into a good situation just from the talent that they have to work with, right? You have 3 high school Americans that are still obviously very young, and Troy Franklin, Dante Thornton, and Isaiah Brevard. Chris Hudson was really, really doing well for the Ducks towards the end of the season, the regular season, I should say. So he's emerged. Devin Williams, we got to see what happens with his decision. He's probably the biggest name on offense to watch as far as maybe trying to go to the NFL, because I know Forsythe said that he's already coming back. And then I don't know how many NFL looks the offensive linemen are going to get. So I think that there's definitely some potential there. And I think that the quarterback for next year, I think that you want to try to take a quarterback in the transfer portal, because even if Ty Thompson's the guy, you don't have any proven depth behind him. So for if I'm an offensive minded head coach, I'm looking at this team and I'm really excited at what there is to work with right now. And then if you bring in a guy like Kiffin, then even though he may not be the best recruiter, I was having a conversation with someone earlier today, and I was saying, even if Kiffin's not the best recruiter necessarily, I think his name does the recruiting, right? His body of work does the recruiting for him. So it's just crazy to think about how big of a moment this is for the program, because you want someone, because you've seen these past couple coaches leave, you want somebody that maybe looks more promising for longevity. But like I said earlier, I feel like you want to go for that splash hire that would get you in the playoffs as soon as possible. All right, this next question is from Family Berliner. Thanks for the question, and thanks for watching the show. Better fit for Oregon head coach moving forward, offensive-minded coach or defensive-minded? Yeah, this is something that has been brought up a couple times. Just a lot of people are asking it, across the Oregon fan base. It's an interesting question, because I feel like on the one hand, Oregon's offense has been its identity. You look at when it's ascended to I don't want to say the top of the sport, but very near the top of the sport. It was really about the offense. When they went to the playoffs against Florida State, and then obviously against Ohio State in the national championship, their defense wasn't anything super, super special. It was, Marcus Mariota and Royce Freeman and Darian Carrington, Pharaoh Brown, Devin Allen. Those were the names that were really making that thing go. And we've seen, look at the college football landscape. It's not necessarily the great defenses that are winning the championships. Sure, Georgia is what they are. Georgia's crazy. Like, they're just insane. But at the same time, look at them in the SEC championship game. Alabama made them look mortal, and they exploited them. But how much of that can you attribute to Nick Saban and, the adjustments that he's able to make? I think that's a question that you can ask. But all the best teams in college football now can put up points, and put up points in a hurry. So I think that going for an offensive-minded coach makes sense. And then when Oregon was just really, really good, I want to say this year, but it obviously hasn't been that consistent. But look at 2019 when Andy Avalos had that defense humming, and they were among the best in the country. So I can see the argument for both, but I think a majority of people probably go with offensive-minded. That's why it's so curious what would things look like with Dave Aranda. Yes, Chunky Monkey. The Ducks did go to the national championship with Chip. That's a good point. But okay, I don't want to bounce all over the place too much. But if you bring in a guy like Aranda, then you got to watch how he builds out his staff really closely. Because he would have to bring in a really good offensive mind, and someone that you're confident in can run the offense really well. Because I think that was probably part of the big problem with Cristobal as the coach, is that you saw that he was putting his foot down and not letting Moorhead have full control of the offense. I think that's really evident for anybody that was watching this team. The vanilla offense that they were calling it sometimes, just the lack of creativity. I think that's definitely not something that you would attribute to Joe Moorhead. So I'm going to go offensive-minded coach. I think that's what makes the most sense. I think something to consider, this is from Joseph, I think something to consider is that we lost both of our coordinators. Coordinator candidates want to go somewhere that they can learn from an established and proven head coach. Yeah, that's a good point. He continued and he said, if we hire a Wilcox or a Taki, I guarantee we don't draw interest from high profile coordinators that can make a huge difference for this team. Yeah, so I think that kind of goes back to the point of, you want to get someone who's maybe a little bit more proven as a head coach, right? Someone that can attract those high level coordinators that people want to work with, because they know that if they go to learn under that coach, then they can hopefully do well, not only as a coordinator, but learn more about what it takes to run a team, to run a program, and get to that next level. I think another dynamic that's really interesting in all of this is college versus NFL just desire for a lot of these guys. Some people, you look at Lincoln Riley, right? He's obviously been at the college level forever, and people were wondering kind of how much he weighed the NFL, but clearly he's a college guy, and he's going to be staying in the college ranks for a while. At least that's what it looks like. Versus a guy like Matt Rule, who was at Baylor not too long ago, and he took that step to lead the Panthers. And the Panthers obviously aren't doing too well right now, but I think that's something that's hard to figure out unless it's made public, how much a guy wants to be in college versus the NFL. Or if they're in the NFL, do they want to come back down to the college level? Do they view that as a step down, which it literally is, but not so much in a negative way, right? If you come down from the college ranks to lead a program, or the NFL ranks rather, if you come down from the NFL ranks to lead a program, then I think that's that's a program showing confidence in you, and that's a good thing at the end of the day. Next question: how do you think a new head coaching hire will affect season ticket sales? Is that a concern for the school at all? That's a good question, because I feel like when we've seen I think I've seen some pretty cool stuff over Twitter, because I put something out the other day. I was saying, hey, like I'm seeing people, and I said this on yesterday's show. I said I'm seeing people maybe calling for support of Justin Wilcox as the next head coach, and I think somebody responded to me and said, if Justin Wilcox gets hired, I'm going to turn in my season tickets. So that, I think that's a dynamic that Oregon has to deal with as well, because you think about Autzen Stadium, and it's the best home field advantage in the Pac-12 for sure. That's what Rob Mullins was saying, as far as, when I asked him, what did you learn about these past coaching searches? And he was saying, I understand that, and I learned that the Oregon coaching position is in the Oregon football program is basically just awesome. And it's going to be a job that a lot of people want. He was saying his phone's blowing up and there's no shortage of interest. So I think that is a concern for the school, but at the same time, it would just further support making the splash higher, right? If they hire a guy that is a little bit more safe, or just, looking for that longevity, I don't know how that affects the ticket sales. I think that it's something to think about. Gary Chadwick question is, what about Kyle Whittingham? I love Kyle Whittingham as a coach. Obviously not a person that a lot of Oregon fans like of late, given the couple beatdowns that he put on the Ducks lately, but that's a guy who clearly knows how to develop talent. Definitely an asset and a plus in-game coach. Utah's starting to get some recruits, so he's a guy that I feel like, what would he look like at Oregon if he had the resources, if he had the branding behind him and the backing that Mario had. I think that'd be interesting, because he doesn't have an established reputation as a recruiter, but he's definitely one of the best coaches in the country. He was the Pac-12 Coach of the Year, but there's been chatter that he's thinking about retiring after the Rose Bowl, but I don't know. You could think of that two ways. What if they win the Rose Bowl over Ohio State, and he says, hey, let's take a step back. Let's just take this for what it was, and that's a good way to go out, right? Or if they play Ohio State close and they lose, and that just makes them more hungry. I don't know, because let me see how old Kyle Whittingham is. I think that obviously that's something to consider here when we're looking at retirement. He's only 62, and he's a California guy who says he's from San Luis Obispo, so that would kind of fit what people are asking about with the West Coast ties. I think at the end of the day, though, no matter who Oregon goes with, there's not going to be a guy that checks every single box that the Oregon fan base wants, and I think that that's something that needs to be considered. Let's see. Looking through these questions. Let's see here. Todd, thanks for your comment. Phil Knight doesn't have a lot of years to enjoy Oregon football. No sense getting Kelly, Wilcox, Taki, guys that will give us 8 wins. See, that's an interesting thing to consider, because I feel like so he's 83, and obviously that's getting up there in age, but I feel like the support from Nike is still going to come, obviously even after he passes on. But who knows how much of a priority it really is for Phil Knight to win a national championship. Obviously, if you pour the kind of money that he has poured into Oregon, you're going to want to see some results, right? You would definitely expect that. But he's already built a huge brand that's tied in directly with the university, and yeah, it's just another dynamic here. So that's just more reason why you think you need to. I agree with what you're saying, Todd. They got to make the splash hire. I don't think that Chip Kelly would it'd be exciting, like, writing the storylines for Kelly comes back to Oregon and looks to, I mean, you can't say reestablish because they're already one of the top teams in the Pac-12, but I just haven't been super impressed with what he's done at UCLA, and we know that he's not a big recruiter. So then there would be huge pressure on the coordinators to and the assistants to be elite level recruiters. So I think that this is definitely another good talking point to think about here. All right, question from Michael O'Brien. Shout out. That's one of my homies. How much influence do you think Nike has on this next hire? I mean, I don't know how much Nike has specifically, but you got to figure that Phil Knight's in a lot of these meetings talking with the Oregon boosters and the high level execs and the brass at Oregon. It's probably got to be a hire that they're gonna sign off on. I think I saw a comment that said, you got to throw $100 million. Yeah, Todd's comment: spend $100 million and get it done. I mean, it's tough because people talk about obviously how big money is, how big of a factor money is in these equations. But the thing that I think needs to be known and understood is that just because Oregon has all the backing from Nike, like Phil Knight being the number one booster, I don't think it matches necessarily the booster programs and the financial resources that some of these bigger name programs have out in the SEC and the Big Ten, because to a degree, you could say those programs, since they've won national championships, people are more likely to donate. And I just feel like the more that I'm thinking about it, it seems like Oregon's just at a disadvantage geographically because they're not, other than Los Angeles and people and the states in the state of California. That's tough because all these other programs, all the SEC, they have people in their backyard and it's way easier for these recruits to take trips than to come all the way across the country to Oregon. So I don't think that I'm not trying to say that Oregon can't win a national championship. I just feel like that's another barrier that I'm kind of coming up on as I think about these questions and kind of what the future of the program looks like. It's so much easier for a recruit in Texas to just say, hey, I'm going to go up the road. I remember when I was at DeSoto and I was talking to these guys and they're like, oh yeah, I had a game on Friday and I'm just going to go to A&M tomorrow, or I'm going to go to UT tomorrow. There's no one near Oregon that is usually a very, very high level recruit. There are talented guys in Oregon, but it's pales in comparison to most of the rest of the country. All right, let's go hide the comment here. All right, let's see what else we got here. Radio 601, you can't win a national championship overnight. Takes at least 2 to 3 years. That's a good point. I think that's why the recruiting part of this is so important, because you want a guy that is going to be able to keep bringing in high level players. That's why I felt like I didn't think Oregon was going to win a national championship this year. I thought that they were going to be, pretty competitive as a team overall, but I still feel like they needed to have 2 or 3 top level recruiting classes, to add to the roster. That's why Oregon, to be a national championship contender, I don't think it's a secret that you need to live in those top 5 rankings at the end of every recruiting cycle. So you just got to keep hammering recruiting. And it's going to be so hard for someone that comes in after Mario to match his level of recruiting. So you just got to be realistic in that sense. So I feel like, yeah, you gotta build, but at the same time, I think that there is enough talent on this roster, as we've clearly seen. There's enough talent on this roster to compete for a national championship and to be in the conversation of being a playoff contender as soon as next year. But we have to see who comes in to be the head coach, what kind of assistants they bring in, what kind of attrition we see on the recruiting trail, how they can make up for that attrition, and then who we see leave the program in the transfer portal, because the transfer portal is absolutely booming right now. Alyssa Shaw asks, what about the Utah defensive coordinator? I think I saw his name in in the comments the other day on the last show that it was a Utah fan that was in the chat, came to hang out for a little bit. We love having other Pac-12 fans come in because it's all interconnected here. And they were saying, stay away from the DC. I'm just forgetting his name right now, so give me a second while I look it up here. Okay, Morgan Scally. I think it's Scally. Yeah, I mean, especially if Whittingham does end up retiring, like some people are whispering right now. There's whispers about that. Then maybe you look at a guy like him. But at the same time, if you're looking at his situation, I'm looking at his bio right now. It says this is his 14th year overall as a Utah assistant. So I think that that's probably somebody that Whittingham was probably grooming to be a head coach if he does end up retiring or going somewhere else. So Utah has obviously been one of the best defenses in the Pac-12 for a couple of years now, and I think that it could be a name to look into. Tony asks, think they'd go after Dabo Swinney or even go after Lane Kiffin? Yeah, we've talked about Kiffin, pretty extensively so far in this episode of the podcast, and I talked a lot about him last night in my Twitter Spaces. And I'm thinking about maybe doing one of those tonight. Just got to see how the rest of the day looks. But Dabo would be a cool guy to go after. It's just you can't. It kind of just goes back to what I was saying about how it would be hard to get someone that is going to check all those boxes because that's a huge name. I feel like I don't think he would come right now. He's probably a guy that the timing isn't super right for him because after you have a down year, if you're a competitor and you have a down year, I feel like, especially for Clemson, right? Clemson's a really special situation because they've been in that playoff conversation. They've won national titles recently. I think he'd probably have to have multiple down years before he looks at maybe going somewhere else. And a lot of people think that the only job that he'd listen to is Alabama, seeing that he's from Birmingham. So I can see the potential there. I don't think that he's a name that they're going to go after right now, but yeah, they're not doing too great. So I can see why people would maybe think that he would at least listen to Oregon in that situation. Headline for Kelly after 2 years will be Kelly does less with more. Let's see. Arch Manning to Oregon could start 2023 as a redshirt sophomore after Thompson or Ashford. Man, Arch Manning is there's just so much talk about him, and he's only a 2023 guy. I don't think he's coming to Oregon. Obviously with them needing to figure out this head coaching situation. Maybe I revisit this after Oregon makes their hire. I think that some of the programs that we're hearing about with him are obviously Tennessee and Texas, some of those really storied programs, and maybe even Ole Miss as well, obviously with Eli going there, and there's family ties there and at Tennessee. So probably a bit of a long shot right now. Let's see. Yeah, Dabo's waiting for Saban to retire so he can go to Alabama where he played. That's his dream job. That's what Vincent's saying here. Let's see if I can get to some of these other questions here. This person says on Dretzky, hopefully I'm saying that right, must hire a head coach with a lot of head coaching experience. Rob Mullins was saying that he's looking for a guy with a lot of experience, but we don't know whether that means as a head coach necessarily, or if that means as a coordinator. You obviously want a guy who's proven at the college level, but it's tough to make the risky hire right now because it's such a big job. But I think that you just got to pull out all the stops because I'd rather they go for the splash hire and then it doesn't work and you're in the market again for a head coach in the coaching carousel in 2 years than go for a safe hire who's going to, win you 8 or 9 games every year and just be kind of okay. And then that's what you're saying is, the standard for Oregon, that you're okay going 8-9 wins a season. So I think that you definitely value that when you're looking for your next head coach, a guy who has a lot of experience. Definitely an added bonus if he has some experience in the NFL. I've said that a couple times now on these past couple lives and episodes of the podcast that you want a guy that it's only going to help you if you have a guy that has NFL experience because so many of these recruits, I should say, are looking to get to the next level. And I think that part of me feels like in order to get back to the national championship or be in the playoffs, I think Oregon needs to put out more NFL draft picks, which means they have to raise the caliber of player they're getting even more. Because you see these teams like Notre Dame are putting a lot of guys out every year. LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, those are schools that are recruiting at a really, really high level, and then they're developing their talent. I think that's another question too, just when we're kind of looking at this conversation is development. I feel like it's hard to say too much about how do you guys feel like Mario did as a developer of talent? Because to a degree, I feel like you can put it on him because he's the one who hired the rest of his staff. But at the same time, he's an O-line guy. So how much development can you expect from him with regard to other positions? Like I look at a guy like Mikael Wright, who's been a really good contributor for Oregon, but I feel like he's maybe looking like someone who could be more likely to come back next year because he didn't have the best season as a cornerback. So that'd be something I'm curious to ask about. Do you think that how do you evaluate Mario as a developer of talent? Because since he came to Oregon, they obviously have Panay being a first rounder coming out of here. You have Herbert being a first rounder coming out of here. KT is going to be a first rounder coming out of here, but all the best programs have best programs have multiple first rounders, pretty much coming out every year. Nick, his question is, Max, in your opinion, will we have a coach before signing day? I think they will. Whether that makes sense as far as rushing into it is another thing. I think that they are going to have a coach before signing day. That's the 15th, a week from today on Wednesday. I think that that kind of comes into play here. But like I said, you don't want to make a hire just to get somebody to help keep these guys in the fold for 2022. I think that with regard to signing day, I think that whoever comes in, you definitely want them to retain Brian McClendon. I think he's obviously a super valuable coach to this program. I feel like he's one of the best developers of wide receiver talent in the country. We've seen that. And I feel like we really haven't gotten to see the full potential of these wide receivers because of the inconsistent quarterback play that we've had in the past 2 years. So, Mario's brought in McClendon, who's done a phenomenal job bringing in really talented wide receivers, but we just haven't seen them developed and utilized. I shouldn't say developed because they could run all the routes they want, but if they're not getting the ball, then how can you really, tell where they're at? All right, let's see. I'm seeing comments. I think besides O-line, definitely some wasted talent. Mario focused on 4 stars and turned them into 5 stars. His developmental process is great. That's from No Quarter Tie. Tony saying Mario wasn't good at developing talent. DeRuyter also wasn't great with his defensive talent. They couldn't get the plays in. No quarterback development either. So I want to stick there on DeRuyter for a little bit because it sounds like he's going to be going to Texas Tech, like I talked about earlier. I don't know how it's really hard to evaluate DeRuyter's success this year because I think that there were obviously some pretty questionable play calls, from a scheme standpoint throughout the year. But this Oregon team was only fully healthy for one half of a game this entire year. So it makes it hard to see what would the Oregon the Oregon defense, what would the defense have looked like if everybody was healthy? If KT doesn't get hurt in that first game against Fresno State, if Flo doesn't get hurt in that first game against Fresno State, and then they were both absent against Ohio State. Would Oregon have been able to win that game by a significant margin if they had Flo and KT? And Drew Mathis. I feel like he's another guy. And then Bennett Williams. And then Steve Stevens hasn't played for a long time. Keith Brown was dinged up. Keon Ware Hudson was dinged up. The list goes on, right? So I feel like even though I would agree that DeRuyter hasn't been overly impressive this season as a defensive coordinator, it's really hard to evaluate because that defense was just getting absolutely destroyed with injuries all year. Nick Aliotti coming out of retirement is what Justin's question. Wasn't there like a petition somewhere that was basically asking for Aliotti to coach in the Alamo Bowl? because Bob Stoops is coaching for Oklahoma. I think that would be funny to bring him back. Maybe someone can check on that and let me know if I'm right there. Eric says he developed talent well on the O line and D line. He underutilized all of our offensive weapons and played too conservative. Yeah, I agree with pretty much all of those points. I think for the defensive line talent, it's development, I should say, rather. I think that you have, you essentially you have KT, obviously, but he was a stud as a freshman. So I feel like as long as he kept playing and winning these one-on-one battles with some of the top offensive linemen, you knew kind of where he was heading. But overall, as a defensive line, I think that that's one of the biggest focuses for looking forward in the program, and maybe areas of concern, if you want to call it that, right? Because when KT leaves, who's the next pass rusher? Who's the next pass rusher on this Oregon team that you feel confident can get consistent pressure on the quarterback going into next season? Brandon Dorlus? Brandon Dorlus is a dude for sure, but he's shown flashes, and I feel like he's not as consistent as you'd hope he would be. But he's obviously a phenomenal player. Another reason that the Ducks need to get back into Florida. I feel like I've tweeted that so much. KT, to a degree, he obviously showed flashes, and he's a bona fide stud, but I feel like there's an argument to be made for his effectiveness being kind of on and off right now. And I think that part of that is part of the reason you're seeing Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan picking up so much steam to be the top overall draft pick. And let me be perfectly clear, I have nothing against KT. He is a phenomenal talent, but I think, and part of his being streaky at times can be attributed to schools, teams, opponents, I should say, scheming around him. You talk about Utah using 2, sometimes 3 tight ends and their sets, and it makes it really hard for him to get some pressure. But I do think that one of the biggest areas that he improved on this year was his run defense, and I really admire him for that, because he was constantly, saying, whenever there was so much hype this whole season, talking to him at press conferences, and it was basically just saying, hey, you're really, really good. What are you looking to improve on? What else? Where's the area to grow? And I think that I always admired that, because he's like, there's little things I can tweak, and he's become a really, really good run defender as well. So I think that that's a big shout out to him for that. But yeah, Mario played conservative. You got to think about his mentality. He's an offensive lineman. He wants to win at the point of attack. He wanted to recruit guys that are bigger. Look at these kind of linemen that are on Oregon's roster right now. Oregon has the biggest bodies in the entire Pac-12 on both sides of the ball. Utah had some pretty big guys on the offensive line, but if you just look at Oregon at the line of scrimmage and you line them up next to all the other teams in the Pac-12, Oregon's going to be bigger than every one of them from top to bottom. No question in my mind. So I think it's good from that degree, at that part. But Mario loves that inside zone, man. He's and I think that goes back to what we were saying with Moorhead's offense looking pretty dry at times. And I think that it's pretty evident that Mario was putting his foot down and saying that we're going to run the ball, and I don't care what anybody has to say. That's what we're going to see. So it's tough. Let's see. I'm getting a lot of comments in here, so let me see here. Yeah, Dorlus and Funa are definitely big names. Eric saying, what about Moss? Yeah, Cyrus Moss is without a doubt the biggest recruit right now. That's still kind of within swinging distance for Oregon. But if you're just looking at it right now, I feel like you have obviously Oregon, Arizona State, Alabama was in the picture, but it looks like he's going to be visiting USC for his final trip before everything, before he ultimately makes his decision. And then his decision, as far as when that's happening, it's going to be in the early signing period. During the early signing period, he's going to go public, but USC has a ton of steam. USC is looking real good for Cyrus Moss. You talk about them getting in home before Oregon did. that's another disadvantage that they had because they were in the Pac-12 championship game. You see all these other teams that are going out on their trail, seeing all these recruits, and they definitely did themselves a huge favor by getting in home with him and selling them on their vision and how they're going to turn the culture around. So I'm going to hopefully talk to him after that official visit. But now with Oregon losing Cristobal and all these other staffers, looking like they could be on their way out. Mirabal, it looks like he's obviously going to be joining Mario over there. He was a huge recruiter. And I think that's something that you have to look at when you're looking at this whole situation with Oregon and recruiting. Mario was a guy who took the reins and took the lead recruiting so many guys, right? That you will not find another head coach in the country that's going to work as hard on the recruiting trail as Mario. Maybe Saban and Lincoln Riley and Kirby Smart. Those are some of the names that come to mind. But the good thing, too, is when I talked to a lot of these guys when Mario was here, he was saying, or they were saying, I should say, these recruits were saying, I'm hearing from Mario. I'm also talking to Big Joe. I'm talking to Moorhead. I'm talking to McClendon and Ken Wilson. This staff did a really good job holistically, if that's the right word to use in this situation, of recruiting guys as a staff. So that's why if I'm Oregon, I'm hopefully going to try to hang on to some of these guys. But it just really depends on what happens with the head coach. And then staying on Moss, comment here from Las Rageous Raider. Maybe are you out there in Vegas? Who knows? Because Moss is a Vegas guy, so I think that's pretty cool if you're out there. I haven't gotten to see Cyrus in person, but that'd be really cool. Moss would need a year to learn the position and gain 20 to 25 pounds. He's raw. That's a really good point. I mean, he's a 6'5" guy, but I think he's 215 right now. I think KT got up to 250, and he's in that 6'5" range too. So I will say that he really likes the vision that they have for him as far as the KT pitch, coming in to replace Kayvon and be the next big edge rusher at Oregon. I think that's really big, but I agree. He is kind of raw, but he does have some versatility, seeing that he's played both the defensive end and the linebacker position. But just looking at him and the needs on this roster, I think you definitely want to get him in if they're able to land him and get him playing in that edge rusher role. Put Flo on the edge. That could be interesting. Let's see here. What other questions do I have here? We're already almost at an hour, so we're flowing for sure. My jaw feels a little sore. I wonder if it's just because I've been talking so much lately. It's a rainy day here in Eugene. I wonder, it was kind of funny when Mario left, it was pouring rain in Eugene, and then yesterday it was pretty sunny. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see. Christopher's question. Thanks for the question, Christopher. Getting tongue-tied here. Kalani Taki or Dave Aranda? I go with Dave Aranda, especially because you got to take into account that Dave Aranda has California ties, and that's going to be huge. Because I think with Dave Aranda, to a degree, you kind of get the longevity and potentially the the splash hire, right? He's a guy who has championship roots from his time at LSU, and then because he's from California, you hope that he would not be drawn away to some bigger jobs. So I think that that he's the more attractive name right now. But I feel like with Sataki, there's definitely got to be some interest there, just from a fan's perspective because of how they did against the Pac-12. But let's take a step back. How did the Pac-12 look as a whole this year? I feel like that can maybe take away a little bit of the steam, and how you weigh or evaluate the BYU season and their success against the Pac-12. Let's see here. Vincent said, I can get this up here. Vincent said, Mario understands to win a championship, you have to be able to play physical with the SEC teams. Totally agree. Totally agree. And I think that that's a good thing that we saw during his time at Oregon is that they can compete now at the line of scrimmage. I mean, before Mario got here, do you think that Oregon could have competed and won the line of scrimmage with Ohio State? I feel like I'm asking these questions, but no one's able to talk to me because of the format of the live. But you get my point. I don't think they would be able to win at the line of scrimmage if they didn't have the players that Mario recruited here. I should say. And I think that's been a big blessing, because not only do you have those guys on the roster, but you see how impactful that can be. And then look at Sir Mel's. I mean, he's a still kind of a West Coast guy, recruited to come to Oregon, and he's committed in the class of 2022. And he's sounding like he's probably going to stay on board, just based off of what what he's tweeting. That's a 6'5", 327-pound defensive lineman. Like those are the guys that you do not see out west. I think that if Mario's not here, then who's to say he's not going out to the SEC? He's from Florida originally, so I think that helps kind of clear that picture up. But he's going to be really big for this Oregon team to have. Jason Jones, you talk about another big body. He's played really good football, I feel like, towards the end of the season here. You look at that Oregon State game is kind of what I think about, and kind of what he was able to do there, blowing up the line of scrimmage. He got his first sack. I think it was in that Washington State game. So he's one of those names that I'm really excited about. If you have, let's see, I'm trying to think about next year's defensive line. You have Brandon Dorless. I think Popo would come back, is what I'm thinking right now, but maybe I have to mull that one over a little bit more. And then you have Keon Ware-Hudson, who's shown really good flashes at times. Jason Jones, who's slimmed down a lot and has received a lot of praise from the staff for that, because he came in just super, super, super heavy. But he's been doing a great job since he's been at Oregon, and I think he's one of the guys that's really primed to be a steady contributor on that defensive line. And then Christian Williams got some decent reps when Keon got hurt towards the end of the regular season, and I think he showed flashes of being a pretty promising guy. So that defensive line talent still isn't there compared to where the offensive line talent is at my point. I think, yeah. So yeah, we're hearing some more Jason Jones, praise here, and I think he's someone that is really, really someone to be excited about. Internet is, I think we're back. Sorry about that, folks. My internet has been super untrustworthy lately. Here we go. Now my question is showing up, so sorry if that's super delayed. Reaper Ray asks, what about Joe Brady? He's been a name that is definitely all over Oregon Twitter right now, but I think there was also rumors that he was All right, my Wi-Fi is really not doing me any favors here, so I think I probably need to wrap it up here and then pretty soon. So I'll finish answering this question. But yeah, Joe Brady, he's I think it's good that he has that NFL experience, and I feel like he was probably just fired by the Panthers, by rule, because you kind of you see that happen all the time, right? Head coaches fire their coordinators or their assistants to kind of save face and maybe buy themselves a little bit more time. So I think that Joe Brady would definitely be a cool name, someone that would drum up a lot of excitement and that people would be excited about. So but I just don't know how realistic he is. And look at a guy who you want to have him be someone who's from closer to Eugene, right? And he's another Florida guy. So it just stinks, because I feel like these past two hires have kind of showed Oregon that they need to shrink their pool a little bit as far as geographically, to have some of that long-term sustainable success. So I think Joe Brady would be an exciting hire, but I just don't know how realistic he is right now. But I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. If you guys are watching on the live stream right now on youtube.com/Oregon Football Max Torres, I'm trying to get that custom URL. If you guys are watching, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, please, and go ahead and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any future live streams. These are a lot of fun, and if you can subscribe to the channel, it helps me tremendously. It only takes a couple seconds out of your day. But I'm also thinking about doing a Twitter Spaces later tonight, like I mentioned. So if you want to find me on Twitter, go ahead and follow me. Oh, I'm over here. Follow me at mtorres sports right there on Twitter. Sometimes I ramble there and throw my thoughts out there. And I usually announce when I'm doing these live streams, and I post podcasts and everything over there. And go on over to ducksdigest.com, si.com/college/Oregon. We're pumping out tons of content. You don't want to miss it, especially with the early signing period coming up next week. Like I said, recruiting is definitely fun, so I like to check that out. But thank you guys so much for watching. Go ahead and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and you can also find us on Spotify. But thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. We will see you in the next episode, and I hope everyone's having an awesome week. Take care.